and welcome. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core Du Corps, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or a student. This broadcast is about a point of view of Pilates, just one out of yours and everybody else's, right? My conclusion on my notes will end up on Facebook, being a title without a number added to it that states Pilates is sensational, in that you can feel it. There's sensation involved. And so as a Pilates instructor, we've already covered that the core here is a literal grip at the hips, right? But in terms of how do you teach toward that, and how do you do it sensationally, meaning from sensation, not just intellectualization. Deliver a feeling, not just a concept or a thought or thinking. So if you play this and you're listening, well, but see, I've never done that and I'm wary to do that. When you lay on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat and your head is on a pillow if it needs to be, so that this area can be at ease, why do you want the body to be at ease? In MMP, the answer to that is because in order to be eccentric, you have to start at ease. So I've asked people to lie down on their backs on, I got the Cadillac, which is a hard padded foam surface, usually level and flat. And when people do that on a flat surface like that, often their body is tight in ways that do not allow them to be at ease in that position. And so that's why my number 2 title is about why pillows. Why pillows? The pillows, harder foam rubber than soft feather, but pillows that allow you to put the different parts of the body and the weight that they have in them, support it in a way that allows the body to be more at ease. So I'm trying to focus on the point being to make it sensational. And so how do I develop the ability in my students and in myself to develop a better, stronger, deeper grip at my hips? And one of the easiest things to do that is direct sensation is to start developing a distinction between engaging your rectus abdominis and not. And so what is that? That's some muscles on the front of your stomach, okay? To make the grip, you have to know how to utilize more of your transverse abdominis and less of your rectus abdominis in order to facilitate the grip. Now, this is a marble, and a friend gave it to me on a pedestal once for Christmas. And then a gemologist told me that it was black onyx, and in terms of chakras of the body, I thought this was fascinating. It's the chakra right around in here that this marble belongs in terms of all of that chakra stuff. I just use it as, why? Because it's heavy. It's heavy. It's heavy. And it's better than me and my fingers or something less ideal than just heavy like this. Maybe in the shape of a barrel, but to develop a grip at the hips or a pull of the engagement at the abdominals that has width to it, not just dome-shaped, because we're after the width of the grip. I guess I put that away. So, the grip that we make on our hips, you must think I'm completely insane. The grip that we make on our hips, oh, and that was that grip that we're after is one that calls for a toning down of the engagement of the rectus abdominis to allow the involution of the grip. And you see it anatomically in bodies all the time, where in doing curls, the rectus is seriously involved in that. So there's this protuberance of a canoe shape vertically at the lower belly because that muscle is so developed. And in Pilates, and the Pilates grip, it's not that big a player at all. So when you tell your students, or you do this for yourself, and you may just make a ridge of your fingers, and you press in right above your pubic bone into your belly, the softness of your belly, and this is, you're lying there at ease, relaxed, and you like push into your stomach a little bit. And then the instructor says, I say, feel what happens under your fingers when you lift your head. And to many, there's astonishment that the lifting of their head causes muscular engagement way down there in their lower belly. Now, as a Pilates instructor that comes in and really wants to help a person get a handle on what Pilates is all about, or just in the art of teaching, the act of teaching, I would say, now, okay, now you know what that feels like. Now, try to feel less engagement, less muscles under your fingers doing the work, and still lift your head. You'll still feel those muscles probably, but can you do it without feeling them as much? Can you give a person a chance to distinguish sensation? And there's a good chance that just intuitively, without knowing why or how or what, a person can do that. And that's one of those points where you gesture and you say, no, that's Pilates. Because even not knowing how, you distributed the load of your head, the weight of your head, and lifting it up in space over more muscles than just the ones that were inclined to do it all by themselves. Distribution of load. Okay? And so then that goes to just lying there at ease, head on a pillow if it needs to be at ease, and doing the same thing off of a bent knee, where you're just lifting the load of your leg by dragging your knee towards you, a knee fold if you still call it that, but just a minimal amount of load at the other end of the body, and can you lift it up without pushing out against your fingers? The point to that is, when you're able to do that, you're enabling yourself to actually make the grip, to make an involution of grip. So, I came across an email from a dear friend and student from a long, long time ago, where I would place the marble on their belly as a what? As a tactile feedback to know a differentiation between having a grip and not having a grip, being between the condition of core and not having the condition of core as a grip. And that it's not all conceptual, in that you set that marble right there and you say, now, lift your leg and don't push up on the marble. And that may take a while. Pilates works and Pilates takes time. DRK, Deborah Robinson Colwood. Which is the beginning and the end of my broadcast today, is that Pilates is sensational. And at the most basic level of helping someone know how to engage their musculature to develop the condition of core and what that takes and how to make it sensational, holds the curtain aside. And you get emails from long out of the past saying, I was traveling somewhere exotic with my friend and took a Pilates class locally, and the compliments I received, she attributed it to the black marble and what she learned from that in terms of how to engage her core. I guess that's what I think she's saying. Right? So, we covered the why pillows, the number 2, which is you use pillows all the time to help the body be at ease in order to find an eccentric engagement. Because in MMP, maybe not elsewhere, but in MMP, in order to be eccentric, you have to start at ease. The backstroke on the long box was my teacher in that, meaning that so often the ropes or straps are so short, you have to pull yourself into tension to be in a hundreds S position, creased at sternum, right? Legs in, spine neutral, but to have to, all of that good stuff, but to have to be in tension all across your chest before the exercise even begins undermines your desire and interest in being able to initiate eccentrically coming out from your center. And you can feel that difference on your own. if you haven't already. So, number 3 is a quote. This is the first thing a gentleman said to me when I met him out to lunch with several Pilates people, one of whom, and primarily, was his wife. And I was in town teaching, and this person showed up, and she appeared to be taken right off the cover of Vogue. All of it, just everything live and in person, right off the cover of Vogue. And evidently she enjoyed her sessions because the husband came to check me out. And the first thing he says to me is, "So, you're the rebel." Which means that he'd done some research of his own and read my politics page on hermit.com and wherever else he learned from. And he was a very intriguing gentleman, and it seems that it was okay for his significant other to continue and then invite me to their studio in their town, right? And for as embarrassing as I may be as an individual, I try to do right by the knowledge that I'm trying to share with you. And that's about 2 things. That's about the existence of core new tension, and that's how the body engages itself to move through space, and about a point of view of Pilates, one among yours and everybody else's, and mine. Right? But this POV, this point of view, called MMP, or Michael Miller Pilates, is a rebel, which is why I'm framing the story with this preface, or that preface. I am a rebel insofar as I'm stepping outside of the culture of it's primarily in existence, which is folklore and which is word of mouth. This knowledge that's handed down by word of mouth without any interest in or pursuit of an explanation of it for what it is, mostly because I think the culture of folklore seeks to preserve itself as what matters most about Pilates. The trouble is, to survive as a Pilates instructor, I think it will become more and more of an advantage to understand, to take a point of view or have a point of view that takes you beyond word of mouth and into an explanation of what it is all by itself. That can be not only understood as having an essence of its own, but having that essence translate into or be the delivery of an experience. So the rebel in MMP is that it steps into theory, it steps outside of folklore and seeks to explain Pilates based on what? Did I ever work with him personally? No. No. Was I alive when he was alive? Yes. But did I work with him personally? No. The nice thing about MMP, this point of view of Pilates, is it comes out of just 3 things in Joe's book. it makes me sad sometimes that the definition that MMP has held pretty fixed for a couple of decades at least, uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, there's no, perhaps stating the obvious, that the pursuit in that movement is ideal in nature, is ideal in the pursuit of real. You're pursuing ideals in terms of straight and round and parallel and smooth and ideal control, ideal fluidity. And somehow, in my notes say, MMP reaches for ideal expression. For one thing, because it's so possible to make it. For another, it's so what the whole choreography is reflecting, is reality. And there is ideal in reality. Perhaps much of reality is the ideal become real. And somehow within this engagement of effort, or in this engagement to move, if the target is control, it's effortless control. Effortless control. What does that mean? It's having control. I think it's like being engaged in order to have the control. But to the extent that the engagement gives you control, it's effortless. It's because you get more out of it than you're putting into it. And so it's effortless in how it seems. So I went from very abstract now to this, combined with this, to help a person feel what it feels like, to feel the distinction between, usually it's nice to have the feet up on a short box or something, elevated, so that the weight is closer to the center and the legs aren't as heavy as if they're way out and flat on the surface. So the weight of the legs is in closer, and you're making knee folds where you're accomplishing not engaging so much in your rectus abdominis. You're attempting and getting or having, you're developing the condition of core in your hips. You're building your core, the strength of your grip. And loading more weight, further away from center, fewer contact points, changes in tempo, changes in rhythm, are ways to make any exercise harder. And so if one can maintain one's scoop, or one's scoop is called that way forever, but it's just not a scoop like an ice cream scoop. It's an involution of a grip that in early stages of expression seems to be married to tucking of the hips, but through the sophistication of articulation, one learns how to engage one's grip, one's core, and not distort the optimum position of the pelvis, and therefore the spine. and therefore the ability to engage in core new tension between endpoints, because the objective is to distribute the load as evenly as possible. I'm way ahead of myself. Pulling both legs at the same time, where they're in independent suspension, is different than if there's a block between them. And here's where your language becomes the art of how you participate in words with a student. Because the order of everything you instruct matters in what kind of results you get. It matters what you say and when you say it and how you say it. But that being what it is, and you yawning and saying, of course, that's all obvious. Exhale to prepare. Squeeze the brick to scoop out your belly and lift both legs at once rather than independently suspended. So, what I'm trying to do is point to the use of something that's rigid enough and wide enough to allow people to be able to place it between, not at the knees, but where, the meat is in the inner thighs, not just out at the bony part, but to be able to squeeze that muscle to brick and using that engagement, some people might call that adduction, drawing together the legs, right? But that adduction is a terrific enhancer to your capability of taking your grip deeper than without it. Nobody out there is really going to disagree with that, right? So, here's a piece of paper. Give everybody the piece of paper and tell them to roll it up. Roll it up. And then the exercise in the lesson is to roll it up tighter without crushing it and without unrolling it. And it's a fascinating thing where adults are working to work it tighter this way, twisting it in tighter from a force on the outside in. And how many kids will come to the inside and roll it from the inside to make it tighter. I don't know why that is. But engaging your core is a matter of muscular engagement that goes or starts from the inside of you and the engagement of musculature that shuts off urine flow is part of the intricacies of in here and going into or coming from the middle, and by going into the grip you come out longer away from it. That's how in my imagery MMP sees the grip and how it's eccentric all by itself, because by going deeper into the grip, you end up with more coming out off of that. Being able to find a good engagement that allows for muscularity to contribute in a way and at a time that you're delivering as an instructor Your time is so brief with any of your students, no matter how often you meet with them. Your time is so brief as a student. And there's other things to do. Doing Pilates is the striking of a tuning fork, right? And it's just that vibration dies away, and you need to come back and strike it again until it becomes obvious that a routine of striking it is necessary to maintain the resonance that you're after maintaining. The vibe in your body, the level of your degree of being able to engage your body So I guess I'd say that whenever you're asked, if you're an instructor and you're instructing, and that's the only time you ought to be instructing is when you've been paid to instruct. That's what you make your living at. Establish value for value, and that opens up the karma of the reception of the value that is waiting for them. Sometimes relative to the value that they've offered. So we come back to this Yoda. It's all about pointing your student into the cave of their own sensation, what they can observe. They can observe or listen to, right? Where they can stand inside the corrective feedback loop of their own sensation. And from that sensation, adjust to more ideally perform the movement. A whole lot of that Pilates culture out there exists in huge imbalances between being, thinking, and observing, and willfully so, and dedicated to, without a willingness, knowledge, or having a reluctance to seek to coordinate themselves in their capacities as human beings. And that's all you're doing as a Pilates instructor. It's profound, and it's as good as it gets in preparing for whatever comes up, in preparing or in continuing in your surviving. You're listening to this, you're surviving, and the idea is to continue surviving. And in MMP, complete coordination of your being, your thinking, and your observing, the more you create resonance with those capacities, the more present you are. And the more present you are in the moment, the more likely you are not to step out in front of a bus, not to step your foot on the stage awkwardly. You know what you know, now what are you going to do about it? Because life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain and add two and two after you've evaluated points of view. Make an offer. I can explain 2 things for $2 in 2 minutes. If you don't want me to explain them, then you don't have to come up with $2 and we can talk about something else. Direct your thinking. Direct it, because if you don't, you end up in a land of Walter Mitty. Geist.